One of our speakers we had confirmed early on for this event was Saleemul Huq, who we sadly lost earlier this fall, and with that lost a real champion for loss and damage. So we wanted to take a moment in our program today to celebrate his legacy. So I'd like to invite Catherine Cheney back to the stage with one of his ICCID colleagues, Mizan Khan.
As Kate just mentioned, Saleemul Huq sadly passed away this fall. He was a key voice and a key actor and a key advocate on all these issues we're talking about today at Climate Plus and throughout the COP28 agenda. And we're thrilled to be joined by Mizan Khan, Deputy Director at the International Center for Climate Change and Development in Bangladesh, which Saleemul Huq led. And of course, Mizan worked very closely with him. And in this conversation, we'll be talking about how his legacy can live on, what ICAD is doing to carry forward that legacy, and what others can do. So I want to start with this question for you, Mizan. Much has been said in the weeks since Professor Saleem's passing about his legacy. In fact, we had a Devex story that really framed it as this: ensuring the most vulnerable countries have a seat at the table. And indeed, he did do that. But with all that's being said, I wonder what you would highlight, and perhaps help us get to know Professor Saleem a little bit for the person who he was, in addition to all of the change he helped to create.
Thank you. When talking about Professor Saleem, I get lost where to start from or where to end up with. I have been working with Professor Saleem for the last quarter of a century, but formally for the last 5 years. As the title rightly mentions, Saleem was the voice for the voiceless, for the most vulnerable, who were often voiceless. Let me mention that as a kind of a climate negotiator, he is the only person, rare species, who attended all the 27 COPs. At this COP, he was supposed to attend at as the advisor of the COP president. And recently he was appointed also as the climate advisor to the UN Secretary General. When after 1992, when negotiations started from 1995, he saw that the G77 countries are dominated by the bigger developing countries. So he was instrumental to form the LDC group of negotiators, so that the LDC groups have got greater voices. They get, incapacitated, And then again, he was instrumental in forming the Climate Vulnerable Forum. Again, a group of countries who are extremely vulnerable, now 48 countries. And then again, for capacity building, for example, these voiceless needed to be capacitated to articulate their demands in the global fora. So he was again instrumental in establishing the LDC Universities Consortium on Climate Change, which is now an official program of the 46 LDC governments, where I have the privilege of serving as the technical lead. The only purpose of forming the LUC, that capacity building that was initiated earlier, that was done earlier under the technical assistance program, was not doing the right thing under the fly-in, fly-out consultancy mode led by foreign consultants. So he suggested that universities should be the central hub of capacity building in the developing countries. And just this only with this one line thesis, he pushed me to Brown University. I used to visit Brown University as a visiting professor. So I wrote a book out of this one sentence of 250 pages, where he is a co-author. So he was kind of an institution builder, and always he was kind of a relentless warrior to ensure climate justice for the most vulnerable, for the least developed countries.
So for those who are not as familiar with ICAD, can you briefly tell us a little bit about your work as an organization and how your work is really ensuring that his vision continues to come to reality?
Yeah. ICAD was established in 2009 at Independent University, Bangladesh. And at ICAD, we have many different programs, for example, and projects on climate finance, on loss and damage, on capacity building. And I believe that ICAD we will try our best to continue his legacy, but not just ICAD. Saleem is many, many times larger than his life. So all over the world, he has institutions which will support to carry forward his legacy. We carry, today I have missed it, we carry the Saleem's mobile office, the pen that he used to carry at the COP. He never attended COP as a party badge, with a party badge holder, but he molded the negotiations remaining always outside the official negotiation halls. This is what Saleem is. And I believe the youth leadership particularly, he was an ardent advocate of promoting youth leadership because he was a visionary. He foresaw that this young generation will face more suffering due to climate change than our older generation. We are outgoing. So his one prime mission was to promote youth leadership. And all across the world, these youth organizations will carry forward his legacy together with ICAD.
So I want to bring in a question from the audience. And of course, ICAD is based in Bangladesh, as is BRAC. And we have Isabel Wisson here, who's the head of policy initiatives at BRAC. Isabel, I know, of course, you've worked with Mizan and you've worked with Professor Saleem, and would love to just go to you for a perspective and a question.
Thank you. Hi, Mizan. Good to see you. So I'd actually love to reflect a little bit more on the case of Bangladesh, where Saleem Bhai was from, where we're from, where BRAC has its largest footprint. Bangladesh is a country with a population of about 170 million people, which is about half the population of the United States, but it is squeezed into the space of about just a little bit smaller than the state of Wisconsin. Because of the climate crisis, Bangladesh is projected to lose about 17% of its land. That's about 13 million people displaced. And this is roughly by 2050. We're already seeing that. So as of, we're already seeing about 2,000 people arrive in Dhaka city each day that are coming from mostly climate vulnerable areas of the country. And so Saleem Bhai was very aware that while adaptation is really important, that was not going to be enough. And so the world needed a loss and damage fund. I wondered, Mizan Bhai, could you reflect on the announcements that have already been made at the beginning of COP on the loss and damage fund being set up? To what extent is that a hard-fought battle won? It's a battle that Saleem Bhai pushed for decades. And where would he want us to be really unrelenting in continued advocacy, recognizing a lot of the details still need to be worked out?
Yeah, thank you, Isabel. Yes, you are absolutely right that Bangladesh is the ground zero of vulnerability that I have mentioned in my book, first book published by Routledge from London and New York, because of the sheer population density, But again, Saleem always used to project Bangladesh as kind of the adaptation capital, because historically Bangladesh had been the model of disaster management, and we are the number one most resilient nation on earth, 170 million people living in a land 65 times smaller than America, but still from big disasters, we have just few deaths, for example, compared to the neighboring countries, even India, for example. More people die out of any disaster than in Bangladesh. So Saleem used to project Bangladesh as the adaptation capital, from vulnerability to resilience. That is what his motto was. And our Prime Minister also has accepted that idea. Now, about this loss and damage fund, Saleem was an ardent advocate. He was the pioneer in promoting and pushing forward loss and damage. And now, I believe that his soul will rest in better peace once this few hundred million dollars, for example, though peanuts compared to the needs, but still, if this money goes to the most vulnerable, for whom he fought for his whole life. This is what we expect, that his soul will rest in peace, only if we can ensure that.
And moving forward, I mean, that's a call to action in of itself, but just to close, to ensure that his legacy lives on, the Loss and Damage Fund being one example of that. But any final words for this group or others tuning in online and others at COP28 about how we can all carry forward his legacy?
Yeah. Our message from ICAD and on behalf of late Saleem is that let us carry forward his fight for ensuring climate justice for the most voiceless, most vulnerable, and that is where climate change, these negotiations will have success. But I'm not very optimistic about this official process of negotiations. So I believe that what you are doing here, for example, or in the ground, on the ground, in other less developed countries, most vulnerable countries, these INGOs, for example, and the also official development assistance, putting money down to the local level. That is where resilience building will come forward, not through centralized management, through the centralized government, because most governments in the developing countries are very centralized. So money does not flow to the local level where the need is the highest. So if we can ensure that flow of money down, as BRAC tries, to put money into the hands of those most vulnerable, then they can create miracles.
Well, I think his legacy is very clear on the stage today here at Climate Plus and throughout COP28. And thank you for joining us to take some time to celebrate his legacy. Please join me in thanking Mizan.